Let me introduce you to the newest JSP project vehicle, my 1988 Honda Civic CRX HF. If you follow us on Instagram, you've already seen this car, and it probably looks a little bit different now. It was running when I bought it, and of course, in usual fashion, is now no longer running and the engine's sitting on the floor. Today I'm going to introduce you to the car. I'm going to go over some of the plans that I have for it, including some new potential JSP products for the EF CRX chassis. And I'm also going to go over a little bit of my history with the Honda CRX because it was, in fact, my very first car in 1999. Tahitian green 1991 Honda CRX SI. Since then, I've owned at least a half a dozen CRXs with another half a dozen to a dozen other EF platform chassis. So I'm very familiar with these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my experience with building this car from the way that it is now until it's completed into what I have in my mind. So without really wasting any time, let me show you what's going on. A couple of years ago, I decided that I wanted to start making products for the EF Civic chassis. Typically, JSP was only making parts for the A86 Toyota Corolla at that time. But because of my extensive history with the EF chassis and how much I love these cars, it was the obvious choice for when I wanted to expand our product line. The first car that I bought was a 1989 Honda Civic Si hatchback. That's the car that I developed the first JSP EF products on. That was the battery tie-down, the radiator brackets, the fan relay bracket, the hood spacers. But what I was really trying to find all along from the beginning was an actual EF sedan. The EF sedan was a car that I had in high school. It was my first project vehicle. The first car I ever did an engine swap on, the first car I ever blew up, the first car that ended up getting parted out when I was done. So after finding a pretty good deal on a metallic gray LX sedan, I sold the EF hatchback and bought the sedan. I really enjoyed everything about that car. The interior was super nice. The car drove really well. The problem was it still had a D16 engine in it. And my goal for product development for the EF chassis and these older Hondas specifically was to get into the B-series platform. I'm sure as most of you are aware, the cost of a B-series engine is not what it was 25 years ago. As I was researching the cost of doing a B16 swap on that LX sedan, what I found was it's actually about the same price just to buy a whole car that already has a B16 engine in it. And that's what I did. I've been pretty much daily driving this car for the last month or two. It's been super fun. But as with any older project like this, it needs a little bit of work. Because I'm dumb and I decided to slam the car on the ground, I ended up cracking the transmission case, which gave me a perfect excuse to pull the engine and deal with some of the issues. I don't know a ton about the history of this car, but after searching Marketplace for multiple B-series swapped EF chassis, this was sort of the best deal that I could find. A lot of the ones in the lower price range either had engines that were really tired and smoking, the cars were just total trash, or, normal engine swap problems. Like these cars basically were pieced together by people that could get it to work, but didn't really do it the right way. Overall, this car is actually not that bad. The engine still has great compression, has a couple of oil leaks. The transmission is in pretty good shape. I was fortunate enough to get the LSD version cable transmission. And as I'll show you, the body of the car, while it's not great, is definitely fixable and perfectly fine for this type of project. Let's take a walk around the car and I'll show you all the things that make this the cheap car that I bought. I'm not going to reveal the exterior vision of the car just yet, but I am going to go over all of the things that are going to need to be addressed. So let's start at the front. First of all, a common problem with the EF Civic headlights is that all of the chrome on the inside of the housings likes to fall off, and then there is no reflective surface for the lights to work. So you basically turn the lights on and you see nothing as you drive down the road. Both of these headlights are complete trash. While they're not broken, you literally can't see anything at night because there's no chrome left inside of them. While these front fenders seem to be in decent condition, there's a big problem with them. And this might seem a little picky, but they are not OEM. These are both aftermarket front fenders. And so the problem is that the corner lights don't fit correctly. They don't align with the hood grate. And the biggest problem for me is that the door line doesn't align with the door correctly. So the door is straight here, and for some reason this fender has a curve like this. So I'm going to be on the search for some OEM front fenders to replace these aftermarket ones. Next up is a door that has been half sanded and has some red paint exposed. Yes, this door used to be red at one point, so I'm guessing this car was in a little side fender bender, and they put an aftermarket front fender and put a red door on it. So most likely This door is actually pretty straight. It might be reusable, but if I can find a replacement originally white door, I'm going to swap it out. As we get to the back of the car, we start to find all the fun stuff, like, you know, all these gold marks. So I think, while the car's never been in a crazy major accident, there is bodywork done all over it. And it does have a significant amount of rust on the rear fenders. And this is most likely because there was a plastic trim piece that goes over this fender here as a protector, and it probably just absorbs and soaks in water since we're in Washington State. And those just absorbed enough water over time to eat through the fender. In most cases, this is kind of a deal breaker on a car purchase, but I'll give away a little bit of a hint. This is not going to be a problem on this project. Moving up to the rear hatch, somebody must have dropped something on this because it has a big dent in the top of the hatch, so we're going to need to replace the hatch. Rear bumper has fender bender damage, dents and dings. That's probably fixable. There's a little crack in there too, but that can be fixed. Passenger side fender, same issue, basically rust along the edge of the fender. Again, not going to be an issue. The rust follows down the front of the quarter panel up to the door. Here's one thing that I noticed that might be a little bit of an issue. I don't know if you can see this, but with the door closed, it sticks out from the quarter panel. So the door is sticking out this way. And when you open the door, there is some bodywork going on here, some Bondo. So we'll probably have to strip all that down, and I'm guessing we'll have to push that quarter panel out just a little bit to get it to line up with the door again. I don't want to just adjust the latch and pull the door closed because that's not the right solution for this problem. Moving on to the other fender, same problem. The fender's in good shape, but it is aftermarket. So the shape of the fender along the door is incorrect. It just doesn't really fit that great. I want it to fit pretty nice. So I'm going to change that out. Also, again, like the corner light gap on the fender is terrible. So we'll get that sorted out with a couple of OEM fenders. Overall, the frame of the car is actually really straight. This definitely has not been in a major front-end collision. The core support is still straight. There's no frame damage on the inner fender wells or behind the headlights. It's basically just kind of like a little rough around the edges, but fairly straight platform that we get to build from. So this is actually going to be exciting. One problem is when you buy like a really nice starter point is that you're kind of afraid to really build something extreme or dive deep into it because it already starts off pretty nice. For example, if this was a 90 CRX SI all original, but just needed like a little bit of paint work, it would be a lot more difficult for me to really dive in and do custom stuff to it because I would feel like I was kind of ruining that mostly original car. But because this car pretty much, if I hadn't bought it, I'm guessing would probably have gotten just parted out and scrapped. I don't mind digging into this thing at all. I'm going to go pretty deep on the outside. As far as suspension goes, I actually kept the ground control coilovers, the ground control Coney combo off my sedan and put them on here. Got some skunk upper arms. And the previous owner did a brake upgrade. The EF chassis has the small diameter spline spindles, so you can't do B-series swap with it. So you got to swap to an SI spindle. And this also has, I believe, a front brake upgrade from a newer Civic. Somebody in the comments could tell me exactly what caliper rotor combo this is, but this is not CRX stuff. This is bigger than the normal CRX brakes. Under the hood's pretty typical. I've already pulled out the fuse box. I was going to go through some of the wiring. Nothing really to note on the passenger side. Firewall's clean. On the driver's side, it all looks pretty normal. As with all EF chassis, it's got the big dent right there on the frame. That's to clear the alternator pulley. But overall, super clean. Original hood, still has the HF diagrams on it. Outside of the car is real simple. What we're going to be doing first is working on its engine. This is the B16A engine that came in the car. It looks a lot nicer now than when I got it though. It was covered in grime, lots of oil leaks. I have completely pressure washed the engine, cleaned it up. Things that still need to get done before it goes back in is an oil pan gasket, front and rear main seals. It already had a new water pump on it, so I'm going to leave that. And just a couple of other small hoses that I'm going to swap out that seem kind of old. Like I mentioned, this is the transmission that came in the car, and I ended up cracking the case. So here's some pictures of the damage of the case as I took it out. The transmission case was cleaned. I then welded up the broken area, sanded it smooth again, and then cleaned and reassembled the case with all new seals inside, new axle seals, input shaft seal, shift linkage seal. So it's pretty much ready to go back in. The only thing that I want to try to find is, this is the speed sensor from a car that had power steering. That's what these lines are for. And I want to replace this with just the regular D-series non-power steering speed sensor because this is really ugly and the non-power steering one looks a lot nicer. The transmission is a Y1 with factory LSD. So that's a big plus. This transmission actually drives pretty good. Reverse is noisy, and as you'll see here in this picture, it's because the teeth are all messed up, and I did not change that because I have a feeling I'm gonna need to go to a hydraulic transmission in the future. But overall, it shifts okay. Sometimes has a little grind at high RPM, but besides that, this is gonna be fine for now until we go on to the second stage of the engine building process, which I'll talk about. The engine is an original OBD0 B16A. It's a 1991 engine. And if you're curious about the age of your engine, or at least on the cylinder head, Honda puts a stamp here for you. There's a 9.1. So this is a 91 PR3 cylinder head. And I'm guessing it hasn't been off of this engine block. Just a B16A engine block. So this is a great starting point. And honestly, my favorite engine besides the B16B to put into an EF chassis. The car's still using the factory OBD0 B16A ECU, and that's what I'm gonna leave in there for the time being. I'm gonna just reseal this engine, clean up the engine bay, get the engine and transmission back in it, and then we'll start working a little bit on the exterior styling. The second stage after the exterior styling is worked on is I'm gonna clean up the interior, and then I'm gonna begin to work on building a turbo setup for this. My horsepower goal for the car is somewhere between 300 to 400 horsepower. That's about the point at which you can keep a stock transmission in it. You don't necessarily have to upgrade the bottom end besides a head gasket and some head studs, maybe put some valve springs in it. But it's easy to do that 300 to 400 horsepower number without spending too much money. And while I have a tendency to kind of go a little bit overboard on my builds, my goal with this one is to keep it as simple as possible. I really do want to try to still keep this as my daily. So it's not going to be too crazy. It's going to have exhaust on it. But I really just want something that's going to be a ton of fun, something that I can go race around on the street, maybe take it to the track, go out to car meets and shows, meet some of you guys. And honestly, it's just a car that I want to work on. I really enjoy working on these EF platforms, and making a custom turbo kit for this thing is going to be a lot of fun for me personally. The interior of the car is mostly complete. The driver's door panel obviously has a tear across the top, so I put some duct tape. The dash is pretty clean. I put an SI door panel on that side, which I'm actually going to put the HF one back on again. It has 5th gen Prelude seats in it, which are actually really comfortable, but most likely are going to get swapped out for some Sparcos. The gauge cluster was swapped for an SI gauge cluster. You can tell by the higher red line. There's not much going on here. If you know CRXs, this is pretty standard for you. Overall, I do plan to keep the entire interior back in the car. I really like having cars with full interior. This is not going to be a race car. It is going to be my daily. But overall, pretty simple. It's like a pretty good platform to start from. It's not really missing anything, which is usually the biggest problem with projects. So because it was a complete car, I can actually just start working on it right away instead of searching for parts besides those front fenders. Before I let you go, I'm going to talk a little bit about why the EF chassis is so special to me, and specifically the Honda CRX. As I mentioned in the beginning, my first car was a 91 CRX SI Tahitian Green. To give you guys perspective on how inflation has gone on these cars over the years, the car had about 50,000 miles when I got it, and it was about $5,300, and it was in perfect condition. In 1999, I was 16 years old, and the only thing I cared about was street racing Honda Civics. Growing up in San Diego, it was pretty much impossible to go anywhere without seeing a modified Honda Civic. And Friday, Saturday, Sunday night, every week, all year long, you could go out to the designated racing spots, and there were always cars out there racing each other. All of my friends and I would basically count down the days of the week until the end of the week so we could take our cars out there and go watch the racing. At the time, my CRX SI still had its original single cam engine, so it was not very fast. And while I may have participated in some races, there weren't many that I won. Now, because I was a broke high school student and making minimum wage at the time, which was about $5, I did not have the money for a B16A engine that I wanted to swap in there. Another price check for you is the cost of a B16A engine with transmission delivered to your door from K Watanabe in San Diego was $850 delivered. So as any broke kid would do, they took their super nice, all original 1991 CRX SI and they sold it to go buy a beater. I ended up purchasing a 1990 Honda Civic DX sedan that was totally sun-faded, completely stock, and overall just looked much older than it actually was at the time. I bought that car for $1,200. I sold my CRX for $5,500, I think, and so I had a little bit of cash left over. First thing I did, K Watanabe, B16A engine, drop it off at my house, disassemble it, go get the cylinder head ported, buy an MSD ignition, engine swap the car, even though I have no idea what I'm doing. I had no tools, I had wrenches and screwdrivers that I stole from my dad, but this was the foundation for me learning how to work on these cars, and cars in general. Back then there was no internet, there was no way to really find out how to do anything, you just sort of had to figure it out. It took me weeks and actually probably months to complete the engine swap, and of course I made mistakes. I got the car running, it was super fun, super fast, and me being an idiot, I didn't torque any of the flywheel bolts, so the flywheel came flying off and destroyed the transmission and the crankshaft. So then it was time to rebuild it. Sourcing a bare short block from friends and another B16A transmission for a couple of $100. This was the process basically for the next 5 or 6 years of my life. Building Honda Civics, racing Honda Civics, breaking Honda Civics, and then rebuilding them again. So a project like this really takes me all the way back to my roots, and that's why I love it so much. In today's standards, this engine and transmission combo does not really hold up to modern engines, but there's just something about the B-series engine with a little LSD 5-speed transmission with a stiff cable clutch that just is super fun and enjoyable for me. Half of the fun about building a fast front-wheel drive old Honda Civic is the fact that it is kind of rickety and sketchy and scary. You could go build a new FL5 Civic Type R right now and make it have 500 or 600 horsepower, and you could probably drive it with one hand down the freeway. You put 500 or 600 in a CRX like this, and you aren't for 1 second letting go of the steering wheel while you're driving. But really, that's what makes these older EF chassis so much fun to drive. It's because it's kind of sketchy, and it's really exciting to drive stuff that's like that, and why would you want to have something comfortable and fast and safe with airbags when you could have something that's trying to kill you all the time? But anyway, I'm going to get this engine bay all cleaned up. I'm going to get this engine all sealed back up again, put together, and back in the car, and I'll see you guys next time.